You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. I hope you all are well. First off, we had such a great response to our question and answer episode that I will definitely be doing another one. If you would like to submit a question for consideration, and I do try to answer them all in one way or another, though some of them are so broad they require a separate episode, and I'm working on those now. Anyway, you can submit those questions at speakpipe.com/hitplay. That is speakpipe, speakpipe.com/hitplay. And there is a clickable link in the show notes, so you don't have to memorize that or write it down now if you're driving or running or whatever. It is super easy to do. You just push a button, leave a voicemail, and we take it from there. I will be making these a regular addition on our show because it was super well received and it was really fun to do. Okay, speaking of shows, this week we have a show all about balance. We get so many messages from the world at large about being tough and grinding it out, and pain is just weakness leaving the body, and get up at 4:30 a.m. and get it done, and blah, 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 blah. And those messages are okay for mediocre t-shirt inspiration, but they're really not useful for us. Not because we can't do hard things. We can 100% do hard things. Menopause and midlife do not mean we have to give up on our big athletic goals or endeavors. We can run marathons, we can do Ironman triathlons, we can compete at CrossFit. We just need to do things a little differently now. We need to respect balanced training that includes equal amounts of effort and restoration, and to respect that a balanced life is a healthy life. And that's ultimately what allows us to enjoy our physical pursuits, reach our goals, feel good in our bodies, and stay in this game for life. So this week, we break that all down with women's health and fitness coach, Baz Moffat. Baz is a former elite rower with more than 20 years experience working within health, fitness, and sport. She specializes in the area of pelvic floor, core, nutrition, and women's wellness. She has a hugely holistic approach to perimenopause and menopause, and her one singular goal is to help women move freely and embrace life. She is also the co-author of the Female Body Bible and the co-founder of The Well, which provides health and training resources for females in every stage of life. You can learn more about her and her work at bazmoffat.com, and I will put links to the Female Body Bible book and the Well headquarters in the show notes. Before we get to it, come on over and check us out on Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Sign up for my free weekly blog at feistymenopause.com. You can learn more about our Level Up membership as well. We've been having really great discussions, so if you like deep dives, I encourage you to check that out. And thanks so much for those continued great reviews and 5-star ratings. They definitely help me get guests on the show in this very competitive podcast market, and I really appreciate it. Also, super quick, thanks to Previnex for their support from the beginning and their continued support. I get so many incredible reviews about their products from listeners. I just got a few last week. One is from Jennifer, who tells me she feels improvement in her energy since starting their Optimal Health Pack. Odette is loving using their Nourify recovery drink after long workouts. It keeps her full, provides all the nutrients she needs, and it tastes great. And Megan, who just started using Previnex Joint Health Plus, and she was using that to combat some medication-induced joint pain, which she actually didn't have high hopes for because she didn't think it would help with that specific kind of pain, and it has. She's super psyched that she doesn't have to use ibuprofen. I didn't want to take that daily. I definitely recommend trying this product. Megan, I do too. It's why I'm running 10 miles now with no pain in my big toes. So thanks, Previnex, for your continued support. We really appreciate you. All right, enough of me. Let's have a few words about our awesome sponsors and get on with the show. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Baz. I know you have a new book out, and that's very exciting. I want to talk about all of that in a bit. But first, I actually want to talk a little bit about your history and how
Okay.
you got here. I know you were a rower for Great Britain, and you actually went on to win a bronze medal in 2007, I believe, at the
Yeah,
World
correct.
Championships.
Yeah.
Do you still get on the water?
No, I don't. I think rowing, anyone out there that rows, you can't do it quickly or efficiently, and it is all consuming. So rowers are rowers. Do you know what I mean? Like their whole life is rowing, and I'm kind of not in that life stage yet. I think I will go back to it, but at the minute, no, I'm not on the water.
Oh, you do think you'll go back?
Yeah, I do. I think I would absolutely love to coach. I just want to get back and coach. Maybe I'll get back in a boat and row. I need to find. I want to find a group of people that can row. Like, so we have a great boat, but like, we don't need to go out that often. We just get the glory rows, so to speak.
I appreciate that. And I have to ask, I really have tried, I have to tell you, Baz, over the years to love the rowing erg. Like I had Sarah Furman on, this woman. She had me so enamored of the idea, and I bought a rower, and I really just, I cannot.
No, so rowing machines are so different to the feeling of a boat, and they're really really hard work. You get into that, unless you kind of know what you're doing, you get into that lactate zone so quickly that you're like, you just can't, and you can't get out of it, and it feels really uncomfortable. Um i i have no love for that piece of kit. I will do it for a minute or 2 or 3 minutes, like as part of a workout. But in terms of it's rowing on the river with people, in a team. The technique is so, it's a craft, and it is so different to like the beasting it and the of a rowing machine. So I have no, I'm not surprised that you don't like the rowing machine.
As a cyclist, I appreciate that. Whenever I'd be in
Yeah,
the gym and they'd get me on the assault bike, they'd be like, "You're gonna love this." I'm like, "I hate this."
yeah,
That bears no resemblance. So you also started the business. You're a mom of two. You're at the Well head HQ headquarters. I assume that stands for.
yeah.
What is the Well HQ?
So the Well HQ is a business, and we are on a mission to redesign the system of sport and exercise for females. And the way that we are approaching that is through education. So we want to educate everybody that is a female and being active about their body, so they don't hold them back, but also everybody coaching and supporting females about their bodies, which, I mean, in the UK, and it's the same all around the world, to be quite honest, that there's no standard level of education. So you can go off and do a pre and postnatal qualification, or you can do a menopause course. But you have to decide that you want to become an expert or a specialist. Whereas actually, your cycling coach probably, I imagine, has a whole squad of people. Some women, some of you will be menopausal, some of you have just had a baby or be thinking about having a baby. They don't want to be an expert in women. They're not going to ever promote themselves as being an expert in women. They just want to know enough so that they can do no harm and really support you when you're going through those inevitable life stages and those things that are going to happen to your body. What we're attempting to do is just say, look, we all need to have some level of knowledge, because right now nobody really has any.
Yeah, yeah, and I was listening to, it's so needed. I was listening to and I'm not going to drop names, but a well-known cycling podcast with a very well-known male coach who very offhandedly, when they started talking about working with women in the menstrual cycle, he's like, "Well, the women usually get so lean and fit, we don't have to worry about that because they don't have it." And I can't tell you how fast I sent some emails to some people that the people on the
But
show.
and that's not good enough. Like, I was in the system. I was on the British rowing team 15 years ago now. I would have, that kind of conversation was happening. It was happening within the medical profession. It was happening definitely within the world of elite sport. Arguably, they didn't know any different. Okay, they didn't really know at that stage that the menstrual cycle had such a positive influence and was so essential to female health. But but we know now, and we know the consequences of that. And for somebody, even for someone like who says, well, do you know how successful I am, do you know how brilliant I am, that naivety and that ignorance is not okay, because it's a duty. I strongly believe it's a legal duty of care issue now, because we have the evidence base. Like, you know, like in the States with concussion, all that work you've done in the AFL, like it is the duty of the sport to look after the heads of the people playing that sport. And I think with female health, it's the same. It's the same. It is exactly the same with the menstrual cycle, with eating, with training people too hard, with public weigh-ins, all of that kind of stuff. It's not a nice to have and a privilege and a kind of a thing that you only top up on if you want, you know, if you want to define yourself as a female coach. It's like, no, this is actually a lot. For me, it's far bigger than that.
Yeah, I agree, and amen. I mean, I think that legal part is, I mean, you're talking about women's health for their life,
Mm.
right? It's
And
a
we're just
big deal.
beyond, we are so beyond. I mean, it's happened, you know, there's been so many horror stories in both of our countries with elite sport and loads of different types of sport. We're beyond caring about how many, like, success isn't enough, gold medals isn't enough. It's like we just can't destroy people. And I think that unless you have an understanding of this, you destroy their relationship with their bodies, with others, with food and with exercise, and that's not okay.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure you see it, I see it in this community. All that, all those ideas that become very, very entrenched and ingrained are nearly impossible to shake out. I mean, I still see women in their 60s who just can, you know, struggle with not weighing in and with all of the things, and it's just we just need to do better. So I appreciate what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, and it's big though. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. You know, I can kind of say, yeah, we're trying to redesign the system, but it's culture and it's ingrained, and it's like, and it's like, oh, but I really want to be successful. So surely if I just train a bit harder and eat a bit less, that's like, I'll do that. And it's kind of yeah. So there's a lot of work to do, but I'm not, I feel really positive about it, because actually, you know, people can get stuck in that, oh my goodness, this is terrible, this is outrageous, and get really angry about it. But actually I see it as a huge opportunity. I'm like, oh my goodness, look, think how we're doing a pretty good job. Like, there are things that are wrong, of course, we've just talked about those, but actually how much better could we be? Like, and this is something that um on a sort of systemic level, no one's doing well. So it's like, well, what are the opportunities now for increasing participation, for increasing performances, for improving health? There are so many gains that can be made, and of course there are examples of people doing brilliantly, but they're kind of quite, they're you know, they're siloed, they're tiny, they're like, you know, one man, one woman bands. There's no one really doing this on a grand scale.
Yeah, amen. Well, thank you for being on the spearhead of this journey. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Let's pivot a little bit to menopause. Where are you in
Mm.
your own personal perimenopausal hormonal journey?
I say I'm ready. Like, I am ready. I feel it's like it's the only life stage that I am ready for. I'm probably overly ready. I mean, I've got no clue how I navigated puberty really. I kind of like, it's kind of all a bit of a blur. I apart from I definitely had reds and some kind of definitely disordered eating at that stage. Pre and postnatal, I approached that in a very, I just come out of high performance sport, like in that athlete mindset. I'll be fine. I am physically brilliant. Whatever I ask my body to do, it always does it. And that was a car crash of a mindset to have. And so that really shook me up. And now I feel like I'm just in this much more positive place, much more positive relationship with my body. And I, you know, one of my co-founders is a GP, is a doctor, and like but I'm so ready that I think any kind of symptom that I have, I'm like, oh, is this it? Is this it? Do I need to go and have the talk? I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I'm 45. But I'm ready. I'm all over it. I'm ready. I'm educated. I know the chat I'm going to have. I know what support I want to have, but I'm not in it.
That's awesome. That's really great.
Yeah.
So how have your, you know, you talked about sort of like the mindset, and I think the mindset is so important. How have your own views of training and athletics changed over time? And sort of specifically as we talk about the women in this demographic, 40, definitely 45 on, who may be in perimenopause or menopause. We have this very active audience here, women who do Ironman still, and they're doing CrossFit, and they come up with this very disciplined, rigid, fixed mindset, right?
Mm,
Like, I get up at 5, I hit the gym, I swim
mm,
4,000 meters. By 6:30 in the morning, I'm on my second whatever, my brick.
yeah.
Um, and I'd like to explore a little bit about, like, the benefits of reassessing, if you will, that mindset as we move into this period of our lives.
Yeah. Um, I think I'll talk personally.
Please
Um,
do.
my my health is so important to me. Like that is the most important thing. And I would rather I'm not doing anything competitively at the moment, but like I would if I was like, I love open water swimming. I love long distance swimming. So I do like 5, 10K races and I really enjoy that, but nothing would compromise my health. So I would never, I am so far away. I have been all in with performance, clearly, as a high performance athlete. I was so unhealthy in that place. I do not trust myself to go all into that place. And I would, and I, so I want, and I suppose the things that I track in terms of like what are the things, when do I know that I'm like slightly tilting over, like I'm really connected in with my breath, which I know sounds really woolly, but like if I kind of like can't, if I feel like my breath is stuck and I can't breathe properly, I know that there's a lot of tension in my body and stress, and I kind of like, if I can't relax and let go with my breathing, I know that's a problem. If I start getting constipated and my bowel health isn't right, then I know again that that's like there's, I'm either not eating and drinking properly, but also there's more stress in my system, because that's a real indicator for me. And also, if I'm not enjoying my children, do you know, like you get to a stage where you're like, they're just really annoying you. Actually, I've really learned that that's not them, it's me. And so if I'm not in a place where I am able to, if I feel that they're always taking time away from me, so it's almost like I'm oh god, I can't, I need to work, I need to train, I need to do this, actually that then really triggers their poor behavior. And so those three things, which are totally random, but those mean a lot to me, that if I can breathe properly, if I have good bowel health, if my kids are behaving, obviously that's not always consistent, but if I am enjoying my children, then that's a really good, those three things are a really good sign for me that I've got it in balance. And I think that, especially for the people that you're mentioning who are, they'll be working full time, many of them will have children, and you're trying to like crowbar training into that already jam-packed schedule. It takes a really brave person to say, do you know what, I'm going to sleep, like, and actually if I get out, if I sleep 1 day a week, the gains I make from that extra sleep are really significant. And it probably won't, it's not, we're not saying you need to suddenly drop from 6 mornings a week to 3. We're probably saying you need to drop from 6 to 4 and replace with a strength and conditioning session. Actually, I have found when I'm working with people in that space, it is a massive leap of faith, because that is not how the culture of those sports are set up. It's like more, earlier, longer. Let's go for a long distance swim. Oh, let's cycle to that swim. It's all about more. But actually, as a midlife woman, or an older midlife woman, like that sleep is like, you need sleep. You can't, there's nothing that can replace it. Like nothing, doesn't matter how much protein shakes, how many vegetables, like how much, nothing else can give you what sleep can. And I think that and especially with this menopausal, like sleep is the first, is really can be very challenging, because of, if you've got mental health, if you're stressed or anxious or depressed, or your hot flushes, all of that, it's a tough thing to get right.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think that that is really, really, really good advice. Just like giving yourself those couple mornings or whatever it is. I mean, it just turns down the volume of the stress, which is, and
Yeah.
it's harder to manage that cortisol. It's harder to manage all of that. I heard you talk on the Inside Try show when you were on, and you were talking about how one of the things that is not appreciated enough, especially at this stage, is matching our very hard days or those volume days with truly, truly easy days. And can you maybe talk a little bit about why that, and why warming up is important, and cooling down, and like
Yeah.
all that stuff that maybe whatever, we jump out of bed like for many years, but now we need to pay attention to those pieces a bit more?
Yeah. So we need to not get injured, right? And
Mhm.
the
Fair.
list of the if you're injured, you're out. Like basically, you can't do your sport. So we need to minimize our risk of injury. As we age, the quality of our connective tissue is less. So the list for females, the risk factors for females getting injured is a lot longer than the risk for males getting injured. Okay. And as we age, that list gets even longer. So we have to do everything within our power to not get injured. Like sleep I've mentioned, fueling right I've mentioned, recovery I've mentioned, but also around those sessions, I suppose caveat this is we can do whatever we want. We can run marathons, we can do Ironman, but we have to put as much effort into the rest and the recovery and the restoration to enable us to do everything that we love and want to do. So I think that for the things specifically around a session are we can't get away with sitting at our desk all day and then going out for a run in the evening. And I think that whereas in our 20s we probably could manage that, and I think in your 20s you can still be a relatively high performer with getting quite a lot of your lifestyle wrong. Like you can drink late, you can go to bed late, because our body is just set up to recover a lot quicker. But as we age, all of that system slows down. So we need to make sure that we're fueled well for all the training that we're doing, make sure that we're hydrating during that training, and make sure that we're fueling brilliantly afterwards. Now, women notoriously put themselves last in these things. That be like, oh, what can I grab at the shop on the way in? What's in my bag? They'll get home and it's unlikely that anyone's prepared a meal for them when they get home. But it's like, how do we make sure that we've actually that we're able to eat around our training? And also we need to warm up, and we need to warm up well, and it's going to take longer. Like it's going to take longer for our bodies to get ready to do the intensity of the sessions that we want to be doing, or the length of the sessions we want to be doing. And we need to stretch and recover and relax. And from a muscle perspective, but also from a kind of like taking us out of that fight or flight and that acute like exercise zone into that parasympathetic zone. Because once you can down train, and it just involves like walking or breathing and stretching, but really kind of quite mindful with that, because then you can sleep. Like and if you kind of stay in that zone, and you get in that zone and you get in your car and you race home and the house is chaos and you're like, oh, I need to get to bed now, your mind and your body are not ready for that. So it's kind of like, how can we start from immediately after that session getting, if it's in an evening session, getting ready to sleep well.
It's so interesting you say that because, I did go for a run early this morning and not super early. I actually slept in. I got up. I'm like, you know what? I need a little more sleep. And I slept in and I was so happy I did. But,
Mm,
I went to run and I have noticed that my transitions take a little more time, for like you were saying, from like one state to another. And
mm,
I would never before like walk to warm up into a run. I mean, it just
no,
isn't something that I
no,
would do. But now I give myself that time to take literally at 3 minutes. What is it
mm,
and it makes such a difference. And then I ramp up and I have this really lovely run and I actually cool down and I feel so much better than if I had just tried to
yeah.
do that thing.
And do you know what? Like it's saying, you just said it was 3 minutes. It was like, don't think about like the marathon people chat or the Ironman people chat. Like think about 3 minutes. Like so, it's when you're in that world of everyone like doing those like competitive chats about like how tired they are, how hard they're training, all that kind of jazz. You can kind of get really into that, like every minute matters, and it does when you're a high performer. And but actually, we're not talking about that. We're talking about 3 minutes. 3 minutes of your life like means that you can enjoy your session more. Like brilliant. Is it in the grand scheme of that 10K run, whatever you've done, is 3 minutes less at a certain intensity generally going to make that much difference? No, it's going to make no difference whatsoever. Or regardless of what all the pro athletes are doing, of course it's going to make a difference to them, but they are fully, their whole life is around that. Like at our stage of life, our life is not all about, it's really important to us, but it's not all about that. And it's kind of, and I think it's kind of, it doesn't really make that much difference. Like which I know is like sometimes a tough pill to swallow, because you're like, surely like every single thing, and especially as we're all monitoring everything and all these trackers and stuff, we can kind of just like stop being a bit sensible about it, can't we?
Well, and you can also, if you want, not turn on your watch until you've done your warm up.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, like that's okay too if you would rather see the higher numbers. I mean,
yeah,
I'm at the point that I literally don't care. But I mean, but you can. I mean, I tell people if it really messes with your mind and you don't like to see that average speed or whatever go down, then just
yeah.
don't turn on
Turn your
your
watch off.
watch
Yeah,
until
yeah,
you're going. You know, it's
yeah.
fine. And you know, you've talked about a lot about fueling and being the nutrition piece, and I think that we should spend a little more time on this because this is also something that people really really hit. And you know, you had on that Inside Try show, you talked about setting your fuel to full, which
Mm,
I thought was such a really great turn of phrase. You know, and I'll again going back to this run, I will admit, like I had a little snack before because I don't do any fasted training at all. I had a little snack before I went out, and then I came home, and that voice that never quite leaves said, "Well, you really only need that half a bagel. You know, you don't need a."
mm,
And I was just like, you just ran, you have this podcast to do, I'm going to swim later, eat the whole effing bagel, like eat, like just eat. And my cortisol, like my stress levels go down, I feel better, I'm calmer, I feel very clear with you. But if I
mm,
hadn't eaten, if I had let that voice go in, I might have been
mm,
okay. But I think that the next session would suffer,
mm,
maybe our conversation wouldn't be as good,
mm,
my nerves would be a little more
mm,
jangly. So I just wish
mm.
I would, if there was nothing else people could take out of this, I really want them to hear that. Set your fuel to full, and I'd
Yeah,
love to
and
hear
it's
you talk
and I
about that.
think every single message we've received since you were 5 or 6 has not been that. And I think it's a really, really hard, you've still got that like monkey in your that chimp in your head, that monkey in your head, and you're having to bash it out of your head. You're having to actively do that.
At
And everyone,
54.
yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
tired of it.
Yeah, and that's probably I got zero clue because I've only just met you, but it's like I know from my perspective, it's because my mum was on a diet for our whole life and struggled, and then we were part of that low fat, no fat kind of like world, and the supermodels and all of that, and it's that kind, and we just can't quite well, it's not we can't quite. There's no way we can. Success is thin and beautiful is thin, and we just can't get that out, and it's like and it's a conscious battle all the time. But I think it's that it's what I've just been saying at like nonchalantly, does 3 minutes off your session doesn't matter, but being blasé, being general, being kind of like, oh, I'm going to have a full bagel is like people in endurance sports like to control everything, and they just and that ability to trust what their body is telling them is something they really really struggle with, because it's like, do I feel tired? Is that okay? No, because you fight all the signals the whole time. You push through. We have immense determination. So when your body is actually listening to what your body needs and responding to that is real, and giving yourself permission to do it is really hard. But what you just said about, oh, I never trained fasted, like again, many women won't they will wake up, and but it takes longer in your fifth. You can't just wake up, have half banana and run. It's like, well, if I wake up and have half a banana, I might need to empty my bowels 15 minutes later, and that might mean, and actually that's a great thing, because that means that I don't get the irresistible urges when I'm out running or training, and my pelvic floor health is better. I'm not leaking. But like, that's an extra half an hour onto your day. And if you're training at 5 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, then am I really needing to wake up in the fours? And then if I do that, then I've definitely not had enough sleep because I'm stressed about waking up at that time. So maybe it's just better not to eat, and I'll just eat when I get back. So it's hard. It's hard, and but we all know that like our women's bodies do not. We are so sensitive to the carbohydrate availability in our bodies that unless we have carbohydrate available, our bodies don't work well. And it doesn't need to be a lot. Like we're talking 100 calories generally, like
That's
half a
what I had.
banana, a bit of an orange juice, like a small amount. It doesn't have to be huge, but it just gets you going.
Yeah. No, it yes. And I believe it becomes more important once we do hit this hormonal stage, right?
Mm.
Like with perimenopause and menopause too.
It's really important because midlife is stressful, regardless of what is in your life, whether that's children, older people you're caring for, full-time jobs, charity work, whatever it is. Everyone's I don't know anybody that doesn't have a full-on midlife, regardless of what it's filled with. But then, and on top of that, chemically, a lot is happening in our bodies as our ovaries stop producing estrogen. It's a hormonal roller coaster, exactly the same as puberty, but the total opposite. And that adds stress into our system. If you add on to that calorific deprivation for huge chunks of your day, that is an added stress. And then you add in exercise, which is a stress. We cannot adapt. We cannot adapt to that training unless we have fuel inside. So we can't get rid of our kids, we can't get rid of our job, we can't get rid of our financial worries as much as we'd want to. We can work on those, but there's lots of things we can't change. We can't change chemically what's happening in our bodies. What we can change is is how much we're eating, and we can also change how we are training so that we have the energy and the capacity to adapt to that training and get better, and still enjoy it. And I think that in midlife, again, that takes diligence, and it's the kind of thing that isn't, I don't think, traditionally has been part of the conversation. That health, well-being piece does not have an easy relationship with performance, does it? And and I know that not everyone listening to this will consider themselves a high performer, but they are a high performer. Like anyone doing anything for a long time is a high performer. And so how do you balance health and well-being with that? And I think that's I think that's hard.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for that messaging. Let's pivot a bit. You mentioned sort of the pelvic floor a couple times too, and I know that's something that you're passionate about. And I read that you recommend 2 minutes of pelvic floor work as part of every exercise session. What does that actually look like?
I'm so passionate about pelvic floor. I feel it's the solution to everything. I feel that like if most women will have pelvic floor issues. I think we've just got to accept it. Like, we've not got to say it happens to about a third of women. It only, if you are doing impact work, running, if you are menopausal, if you have had babies, there's no way you've done all of that without having any issues with your pelvic floor. And most women will be, I imagine most people on this podcast will at least have had 2 out of the 3 of those things. So pelvic floor issues, really, it's a clear sign of dysfunction. Our pelvic floor is supposed to keep us dry, and we're not supposed to be having irresistible urges to empty our bladders or our bowels. And so for me, I feel that up until now, that pelvic health has been a very, very medical thing. So in the UK, really, you can only get support if you go to see a gynecologist or we call them a women's health physiotherapist. I think you call them pelvic health physios in your country. But they're really highly trained, specialized people. They're brilliant, absolutely fantastic. But actually, the world of sport and fitness can do a lot of work so that we kind of not everyone needs to go and see these people because there's not enough of them. And actually, they don't need to be
100%.
telling you, don't be constipated, do your pelvic floors. I can do that. Like, we can use them for the real expertise they need. We can't assume as well that pelvic floor issues are always because you have a weak pelvic floor. And actually, when you come to athletes, it's often because their pelvic floor is too tight, especially if they sit on a bike for a long time. Like, it's like everything's gripping and holding and you're not breathing. So not always, and I am not medical, not always, but in many situations, it's because you do not know how to relax and release and let go of your pelvic floor. And that actually, again, because an athlete mindset is grip, hold, do, push, lift, learning how to relax and let go is a challenge. But that's when I say we need to be doing a couple of minutes of pelvic floor exercises. It could be, so when you're doing your classic yoga poses, that kind of the child pose, the happy baby, the hip openers, those exercises, when you're using your breath to go into it, it's that feeling, visualizing, imagining that your pelvic floor is relaxing and letting go. And if you're like, I don't even know what that is, it's like your hips. Just feel in your pelvis that things are stretching and lengthening. And I think that is a really, it's changing the it's changing the shift in the connection of like what you are thinking when you're doing your stretches and your relaxation work. Can you, for some part of that session, can you shift the focus down into your hips and your pelvic region? Because then I just feel it's a part of our body that we're so disconnected from. Women can't feel it. So in your sports, everyone will have really strong heart and lungs and respiratory systems. They will know how to move their arms and their legs. And if they have a running coach and they say, I'm not a running coach, so excuse this like attempt. But if they're telling you to like, you know, change your stride length or look at your heel strike, whatever, you go, yeah, I can connect with that. If they tell you to do something with your hips or your core, women can't feel it. It's a part of their body they just can't, and unless, but it is a powerhouse in terms of like in many ways. And I think that the pelvic health piece, it's a part of our bodies that we need to learn. We need to do a better job at connecting with.
I could not agree more. I've had on 3 or 4 pelvic floor specialists on the show since I started it, and the one that made me really go, "I have no idea what the hell I'm doing," was Kim Vopni. She has this program, Buff Muff Challenge, but
Yeah.
she has this visualization about picking up blueberries with your vagina. Okay, so, like,
Oh no,
when
perfect. Yeah, I do
yeah,
beans. Same
yeah,
thing,
okay,
I imagine.
beans.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
but I was all out of sync. Like, I realized, like, you never relax it. Breathing in, out, whatever, it's always just like you said, because I've
On.
been on a
Yeah.
cyclist. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, breathe. And I had to really think about it to just like let it go to get ready to pick up the blueberries and then
Yeah.
sweep them up. But and doing that in those child's poses, it is something, even if you feel like you've got all the connection as an athlete to yourself in the world, I bet that there's many who do not, who have never made those
Yeah.
connections.
And it becomes really much more of an issue at midlife. So women could have got through the whole of their lives with no issues, and yeah, they may have had babies and had no issues, no babies, no issues, doesn't matter. But then they suddenly get to 45 and they're like, whoa, like nothing has changed. I'm doing the same amount of training and the same weight, everything is the same, but now I'm leaking, or now I have these irresistible urges. What on earth is going on? And it's the as we age and our connective tissue, like the quality of that reduces, we can't rely on our global system, like the external muscles, to kind of keep everything functioning. And also, really specifically, our vaginal area and our pelvic floor is so reliant on estrogen. There are so many receptors for estrogen in that region of our body that when estrogen is fluctuating and reducing, it means that that part of our body is not it's not as moist, it's not as strong, it's not as connected. And that's why, regardless of whether you've had children or not, that menopause throws up a whole load of other issues in that part. And you know, I was working with a marathon runner. She would never, she just loved running. Like she had no interest in how fast she was running, just but every morning she went out for a run, and for her mental health, for the whole thing, that's just what she needed to do. And suddenly she started experiencing irresistible urges to go to the toilet on this run, and she started working with me. She's like, I hate it now, but that's my tool to keep myself healthy. And if I can't run, I don't know what else I can do. I don't reading a book's not going to do it. I don't want to knit, I don't want to be part of a choir, walking's not going to cut it. Like I have to run. But now I don't look forward to it, and when I'm doing it, I'm really worried about, will I get this urge on the side of a road, or like in the woods, or like what will happen. And you can just see how it really destroys somebody. And she'd not had children, it's never even been on her radar. We did some really specific work with her pelvic floor. We also got her some vaginal estrogen, which is a
Yeah,
real
that
kind of
can really help.
specific everyone needs vaginal estrogen when they get to this life stage, but it kind of like that really helped plump up the tissue. And actually it was that vaginal estrogen that was the game changer, because it just gave her the support that she needed. And and that's life changing, isn't it? Because now she can carry on running. And that's why I say that I do feel it's a real, and I feel that fitness and sport can cope with this. We have no training, but hopefully, like with the work that we're doing, that will start being incorporated into stuff. But I think that we can cope with that. We can cope with helping and supporting women in this space.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I assume that this dovetails into, I know you teach, being strong to the core is a big part also of what you do.
Mm.
And pelvic floor must be part of this whole core, being strong to the core.
Yeah, so I'm not doing one-on-ones anymore, and I'm not doing group work anymore. Again, I would love to go back. I will go back to it once I've changed the world and made it a better place in the world of sport and fitness. But the pelvic floor is a huge part of the core, and I think that when again, I've worked with many women who had chronic back pain or hip pain. They've been to see so many physios, so many Pilates instructors. No one's ever talked to them about their pelvic floor, and that's the missing bit of the puzzle. So often, if you've got pain or discomfort in that region, if you've not got someone that's assessed your pelvic floor or talked to you about your pelvic floor or incorporated that pelvic floor piece into your core work, then that is often the missing link. Now, pelvic floor work at the start is really rehabby, isn't it? Like, you'll have gone through this. It feels, it's very like, oh, it's kind of like your first driving lesson. It's like, I want to do this. Oh, like it feels very, very clunky. But over 3 months, if you're doing it consistently and you're doing it well, over 3 months, you'll be able to start, you'll incorporate it into your normal training. But at the start, it does feel like, oh God, I can't feel it. I don't know how to turn it on. I don't know how to turn it off. I don't even know if I'm feeling it. Am I feeling it? But over time, as those neural pathways start to open up and you get a much better connection, like any movement, it does start to smooth out.
Yeah, I think women don't, unless they've heard, don't necessarily. And the first time I heard it was like light bulbs going on all over the place, that the pelvic floor is part of your core. It's part of this canister that all works together. And I think that, the diaphragms and all things are working together. And I think that we tend to separate things out a bit. Well, these are my abs, and my pelvic floor is here. So
yeah. And I think a lot of people, now we've been talking about pelvic floor for 5 minutes, have probably just turn their pelvic floor on, and like, you've got to let it go. And like what you just said, is like this canister, it's a unit that moves together with the breath. So we can't turn it on for a 5K run, or for like, for a set, like you can't turn it on and turn it off. It's like, it works, it's dynamic. And I think that, again, when I was on the rowing team, it was the initial wave through of core stability, and core stability was about holding and fixing and it's actually, now we've started to realize that, oh, actually, core stability is a thing, but on the inside of that, it's really dynamic, and we need to connect it in with our breath.
Excellent. So you have a new book that is out, and it is the Female Body Bible. What was your, I know that was with Dr. Emma Ross and Dr. Bella Smith.
Bella,
Is that
Dr. Bella, yeah.
Yeah. What is the book about, and what inspired you to get involved in that? Because it's a process. Yeah. I know how books are. It's a journey to write a book.
Yeah. We really wanted to write an evidence-based book for the masses, if you like. So an evidence-based book that covers everything that happens exclusively and differently inside a woman's body. And we didn't want it just to be aligned with people, just like the types of people that are listening to your podcast. So like, absolutely, the types of people that are listening to your podcast need to be reading this book, but so do the people that the people that are playing hockey, the people that are playing basketball, the people that are like, the coaches of young football teams. It's kind of everybody that is that wants to understand girls and women's bodies properly. So it's evidence-based, it's all fully referenced, but actually it's really, really practical. There's loads of stories in there. There's loads of practical application of this knowledge, because often that's what we find the problem is like, people don't have the knowledge, but even when they have the knowledge, they don't know how to use it and apply it to their situation. So there's like 12 chapters. It covers everything that you'd expect, like the menstrual cycle and breasts and pelvic health, but it also goes into injury risk. Why are women getting more injured than men, and what can we do about that? What's concussion all about? What are the life stages that women go through? Like our relationship with food, and also a huge section on Red S, our psychology, how females respond to coaching differently, and like what and all of it. So it covers everything, because I think what's important is that we passionately feel that there isn't a fix, there isn't an app, there isn't a pill, there isn't a way to train. We need to educate people, and then they can make their right choices for them. But right now we need to raise the bar on that education, because no one has any. So it's a broad brush, but it is from a deep evidence base, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And I wish you the best of luck with it, because I think that, that broad swath of education in the general population is super, super important. It's very, very needed, and is a missing piece right now in women's health and girls' health. And you froze. Can you hear me?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are. Hello. My editor can edit that part. Well, it happened at a very good place, because we just got done talking, but you just froze sort of at the end of that.
That's right.
Yeah, that's fine, because It was
We
well
can edit
timed.
that out. Great.
Yeah, I know. It was super well timed. That is all brilliant, and everything that you've had to say is brilliant. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that and writing a book and doing your work with the Well HQ. Is there anything, any messages that you would like to leave our listeners with that we have or we haven't talked about, just about, staying their best, feeling and performing their best as they go through this transition and beyond?
I mean, I think that for me, the most, like, you can do anything. You can do anything whenever you want to do it. Like, and I think that's what I want. I want to end on a real positive, but you have to do the work. Like, we can no longer ignore the work. So the two have to come together. And I think that like, you can have that motivation and that desire, but that doggedness is not enough anymore. And that mind over matter. I mean, I've been in that place, obviously, and many people here listening to this have been in that place where it's mind over matter. Actually, you just can't do that when you hit your mid-40s and perimenopause and menopause and beyond. We have to be we have to balance it out, and also and balance everything. Like, balance is okay. Balance isn't a weakness, and balance means that we can stay competing and training and enjoying our sport for many years to come. And I think that's what you want from this life stage, isn't it? It's kind of like, let's enjoy it for as long as we can, and enjoy our bodies. We want our bodies to feel good. We want our bodies to feel brilliant and enjoy that movement, and not like not really painful.
Balance is not a weakness. That's going to be a t-shirt. That's a good one.
There you
go. Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when I sit down with former 4-time CrossFit Games athlete and family physician, Dr. Julie Foucher, who practices precision medicine with Wild Health and has her own podcast called Pursuing Health. We talk all about the potential benefits of precision medicine for menopause and much, much more. So come on back for that one. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, and please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends, and please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.